Hello lads, here we are in Germany.
Yes, Lance on tour and all that, but why are we here?
Silly you, we're here to explain that war that happened in the years 1914 to 1918.
K, then let's get started, mate.
Okay, let's crack on then. Shall we?
Oh yes, mate.
The German people were well worried at the thought of war. A crew of 100,000 protested in Berlin against the prospect of being wrecked by the French.
Best foot forward.
But when war started, the Germans were pumped for a proper brawl with the Allies.
As shown in this picture, taken in Munich, 1914, even the SPD got behind the war effort and passed a bill to grant the army even more dollar.
A small loan of $1 million?
Yes. You could say that. With the political divisions of Germany settled, the Reichstag passed all legislative power to the Bundesrat, with the War Ministry taking responsibility for the running of the war.
Even that Kaiser lad was well chuffed at the thought of a united Germany.
I know notatis animore only Germans.
As 1915 came, a new supreme commander of the army, Erich von Falkenhayn, became the boss.
With the Schlieffen Plan a failure, he had to make a decision to win on either the Eastern or Western Front. The decision was made to focus on the West with a focus on submarine warfare.
Submarines blocked Great Britain's entrance to the rest of Europe from the 4th of February 1915.
But this continued approach came with costs.
Germany relied on exports, especially in food, where 25% consumed was imported. When the blockade was set up, Britain responded by seizing all goods presumed bound for Germany. Germany then had to control its regulation and distribution of food.
Over 40 imperial corporations were set up which competed with government to administer food supply correctly. It was chaos. Eventually the bureaucracy ordered the killing of 9 million pigs for use of food, but also to regulate grain consumption.
Internal problems were only worsened by the lack of workers, whilst these were able to be replaced by women. Work to produce food was not as prioritized as rural work. This forced the government to produce erst as goods,
or substitutes to you and me. Sausages with no meat, coffee made out of tree bark. The urban dwellers suffered the most. Even animal fats were taken by the government as they were needed for explosives.
Oh dear.
Oh dear, oh dear. Hey Paul, it's a bit chilly in here, Min 9.
Well, how do you think the Germans felt in the winter of 1916 to 1917?
Oh dear, here we go again.
The lack of coal made the cold even worse, as not only was production down 10%, but also the freezing conditions meant that transportation became even more difficult.
Don't forget the food either. The Germans were lacking 20 million tons of potatoes in 1916, what used to be their main source of nutrition. Despite the government setting up soup kitchens, the effects of malnutrition were still making the German people suffer.
The peasantry were alienated by the low prices and overworking. The working and middle classes amongst cities were only angered by the lack of food and forced to the black market.
We should feel privileged with all these apples, Paul. I think it's time we got out of here, Paul.
Too right, mate. Fire up the Chuckmobile.
You know, Germans love their submarines, Paul.
Perhaps too much, Barry. The use of unrestricted submarine warfare at the start of 1917 only led to the involvement of the US, who declared war on Germany in April 1917. Now that the superpower had joined the war effort, there were several costly offensives by the Allies, but Germany managed to hold. Some good news finally came in November 1917 when the Russian Revolution led the country to withdraw from the war, meaning Germany could focus all efforts on the Western Front.
This was a very small victory though when compared to Germany's problems at home. With 2 million dead by 1918, the impact was far from one of joy.
It was also possible that people took inspiration from this revolution and increased opposition for the war. People were questioning the war, Barry, and whether the sacrifice was truly worth the potential gains. A new group was formed called the USPD, the Independent Socialists. By 1981 the party had 100,000 members and demanded
immediate end to the war. Immediate reform after war. No more war loans.
A small loan of $1 million.
Oi mate, do you mind not stealing my lines?
Shut up mate, I do what I want.
What?
January 1918. Things started to really go down for the Germans. The influence of the USPD had led to over 1 million workers protesting and striking. The SPD eventually took over the initiative, seeing it was a popular one.
The strikers essentially wanted an end to the war. With victory in the east, Germany was able to seize much of Russia's coal, iron, cotton and oil under the Brest-Litovsk Treaty.
Essentially this meant 500,000 troops could be transferred to the Western Front. This meant the Germans could finally launch their great offensive to push the Allies back, but this was to be their final move, the Ludendorff Offensive.
Although pushing the Allies back 80 miles, there were heavy casualties and German morale was lower than ever. When the Allies counterattacked, all progress was lost and the 8th of August was described as the blackest day of the German army by Ludendorff.
The Germans were defeated. It was peak times for the Germans in September 1918. Germany and their allies were proper knackered after 4 years of wreckage.
On the 4th of October, Prince Max of Baden was made the new boss and formed a coalition with the center, progressive and socialist parties.
The Kaiser was under threat and conceded constitutional change by allowing parliament to be democratic and consider military affairs. Ludendorff got wrecked and had to resign, and Prince Max started peace talks with the Allies. With the inevitability of defeat, the army and navy began several mutinies, with many refusing to fight. Most of these were socialist-led.
The Kaiser was forced to abdicate by the Allies and Germany's own socialists, and Prince Max was overthrown by the SPD as they became the sole governing body.
All German forces withdrew and the treaties of Brest-Litovsk and Bucharest were announced. Germany was also forced to surrender 150 submarines and other large naval vessels. It all ended on the 11th of November, where German delegates signed a peace treaty with the Allies. Oh yes mate, completely wrecked. You know what, Barry? Let's take a closer look at that picture from Munich.
Okay mate, let's have a butcher's.
Wait, what the heck?